Hello and welcome to this e-session on tackling imposter syndrome. My name is Matt Jones and I'm one of the careers advisors here at York St John University. Now, a bit of a disclaimer before we get started. This session is being recorded absolutely live, so do expect some ers and ums from me throughout, but you are very welcome and thank you so much for joining me today. So by the end of today's session, you should be able to describe the concept of imposter syndrome, reflect on your own experiences of positive and negative emotions and how this could impact on your own mindset. And finally, demonstrate a number of techniques to help manage imposter syndrome. Now, first things first, what exactly is imposter syndrome? Just take a few minutes to think about how you would describe imposter syndrome to a friend or family member. Now, I'm sure Muppets fans will be disappointed that imposter syndrome isn't the disease that Kermit contracted in the film Muppets Most Wanted, but actually it's more around this. So when I was searching for images for imposter syndrome, this postcard came up and I thought it summed it up pretty well. So greetings from your imposter syndrome, wish you deserved to be here. And imposter syndrome really is about that feeling of not being deserving or not being able or good enough in the surroundings that we're in. It's been described as a psychological phenomenon in which people are unable to internalize or recognize their accomplishments. The internal belief that you are not good enough or don't belong. And finally, it's the term used to describe the intense feelings of self doubt to the extent where people feel like a fraud, either in their personal or professional lives, though it's most frequently in the latter. And this can be linked to your studies as a student at York St John University, but also in life in general. I'm sure I've certainly experienced imposter syndrome, and it happens more than you think. So, exactly how common is imposter syndrome? Well, a survey was conducted with over 3,000 adults in the UK, and the results of that survey were that two-thirds of women and over a half of men had experienced imposter syndrome within the last 12 months, which is a huge number of individuals. What do you think were the most common causes mentioned within the study of their imposter syndrome? Just take a few minutes to make a list with a pen and paper of the things that you think caused imposter syndrome for these individuals. So, within the study, the most common cause of imposter syndrome that was found was self-generated self-doubt, which 38% of the participants experienced. The next was being criticised, which is 23%. That could be by a friend, a family member, somebody at work, a partner. The third was having to ask for help, so feeling that vulnerability of not knowing what you're doing or needing some guidance. And finally, individuals comparing themselves to high achieving colleagues and feeling that they really are an imposter. So, how do these factors and how does imposter syndrome affect our thoughts? Well, you may feel within your role, within your studies, all my accomplishments are due to luck, chance, appearance, or something else that I didn't really control. Equally, you could also think, I'm going to be exposed to fraud even though I'm currently doing really well. Now, this often comes to individuals who have started a new job and they think that they've been hired on the back of a fluke and they're going to get found out someday by their line manager. Everyone around me is smarter, works harder, and does a better job than I do. And finally, one of the other thoughts that you could have is I'm going to make mistakes. I'm always on edge worrying about it, even though I'm the expert here. Now, what this could also become is sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you're obsessing about that you're going to make a mistake, and you're always on edge, chances are you're going to make a mistake. So these thoughts are really, really common, and hopefully by the end of today, you should be able to recognize these thoughts are happening and do something about it. But that said, why can't we just be confident? Why can't we just believe in ourselves and be done with it? What do you think about this question? Why are these things so hard to accept? What does be more confident even mean? Can we even force ourselves to believe in ourselves? What do these things look like? What does it look like to be confident? What does it look like to believe in yourself? And finally, how can we implement lasting and sustainable change? Because that's what this is all about. It's about finding techniques that you can use day to day, week to week, times when you're feeling vulnerable or you're experiencing imposter syndrome. So it's not just a 1 day thing or a 1 hour thing. It's something we can use throughout our life and throughout our career. Now, on a personal note, there are many days where I've experienced imposter syndrome and thought, I really wish I had a mini Michelle Obama in my head, basically cheering me on and giving me a pep talk and getting me through my imposter syndrome. Now, the reason I chose Michelle Obama is because she is the epitome of self confidence. She's so relatable and honest. She really is motivating and is a really strong leader. And like I say, many days I really, really wish I had a mini Michelle Obama in my head. Which is why I was really surprised that when I read in BBC News Michelle Obama was interviewed, and she began talking about imposter syndrome, and she said that I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome, and it never goes away. That you're actually listening to me, so people are actually listening to what she thinks. That feeling that you shouldn't take her seriously. What does she know? I shared this with you because we all have doubts in our abilities, about our power, and what that power is. Now, Michelle Obama may not be a role model for you, but think about who you do look up to and who your role models are, and think about whether they have imposter syndrome too, because this certainly is more common than we might have imagined. The next thing I'd like you to do is watch this short video, which can be accessed through the URL on this slide. Now, just one of the people that I talked about within this video is a TED Talk by Elizabeth Cox. One of the people that I featured is the incredible Maya Angelou, who said, I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. So even one of the most incredible um, individuals, sort of the top of her craft, still feels that she's going to get found out and she's tricked everybody. So I'd like you to take a few minutes just to look at the following video and come back to this video after you've watched that. Now, one important thing to remember is feelings are not facts. Feelings are caused by thoughts that we have. So, for example, if you have thought that no one believes in my abilities, then therefore you will feel sad or you will feel like an imposter. So, feelings are not facts, they are caused by our own thoughts. What I'd like you to do is take 5 minutes, consider on your own or discuss with somebody that you're with the following question. What negative feelings could be caused by our own thoughts? What negative feelings could be caused by our own thoughts? So, one example of this could be if you feel unsure about the future, you could feel really anxious. If, for example, you are questioning yourself, am I good enough? That could make you feel really nervous or anxious as well. What sort of feelings did you come up with? that could be caused by our own thoughts. The next activity I'd like you to undertake is again for 5 minutes, so you'll need to pause the video. Consider on your own or discuss with someone that you're with what positive feelings could be caused by our own thoughts. What positive feelings could be caused by our own thoughts? So one example of this would be if you think to yourself, I know what I'm doing, that will bring you confidence. If you feel that you are not competing with anybody, it's just you on your own doing your own work, that could give clarity to the situation. And finally, if you think to yourself, well, I got good feedback last time, or I got a good grade last time, you could really feel motivated by this. So it's well worth thinking about how we can change our thought processes, and that will in turn affect our feelings. Now, techniques. What techniques can we use? So if we use this example here, going from feeling I'm no good at research and having that thought to going to I'm a very competent researcher or I have good quality research skills can be a bit of a stretch if you're trying to do it as quick as possible. So one way you can do this is trying the thought ladder approach and basically adding extra steps in. So you're not going straight from I'm no good at research to I'm an amazing researcher, but you're thinking it through. So I got accepted onto my master's program or my PhD, so I obviously have some research skills that are evident to other people as well as myself. So actually going from you feeling that you're no good at research to feeling that actually you're a competent researcher can be assisted by your thought process and working through this ladder. So the steps are, A is the first step. So what do you actually think? The next step is identifying what you would like to think. So where would you like to be? What would you like to think? And the next step is what sits in the middle? What is the incremental step to get you from A to B? And what you would do then is practice those incremental thoughts. So what I'd like you to do in a second is pause the video and spend 5 minutes thinking about your own thoughts and your own goals for the future, and using the ladder approach, map out the process of how you could potentially create change within your own mind. The next thing I'd like you to consider is if the view you have about yourself is actually accurate. And ask yourself, could you benefit from a different lens or set of lenses? Now, what I mean by this is that we are surrounded by other people who care about us and have a really good handle and understanding of who we are as individuals. Therefore, the next technique that I'm going to recommend that you consider is utilizing different lenses. So step one would be to identify 10 people you know in different capacities and ask them to give you positive feedback. This could be a friend, a family member, an academic tutor, a lecturer perhaps. Step two would be to look through your responses and identify key themes that you get from the feedback that you get. So, for example, 3 people said that I'm great in crisis, or 4 people said that I've got really strong problem solving skills. What I would recommend, I'm a bit of a nerd. I love an Excel spreadsheet, but basically put your feedback into a spreadsheet that will help you to recognise key themes more easily. Step three is to use this information to write a 500-ish word self-portrait, so a paragraph, half a page of A4, about you at your best, based on the feedback that you receive. And then finally, read through this self-portrait and think about whether this negates your negative self-talk. Because it's not just your thoughts about your ability, but it's also those people who are around you who can see you at your best. So maybe that could help. And this is just one example of how you can look and identify your strengths and input your feedback. And again, this is great to come back to at a later date when you are feeling particularly vulnerable, or perhaps you're having a sort of a bad imposter syndrome day. You can come back and look at this feedback because this was given about your best bits and the best bits of you. Some additional techniques that you could use. So give yourself a reality check and ask yourself, is this real? Is how I'm feeling an accurate representation of me? Keep a diary and keep track of your strengths and accomplishments and what you've achieved. Create a support network and don't forget to talk about how you feel and get that support. Do some additional reading. The syndrome is really well researched, so that will help you to see that it's just something in your mind. Note down what triggers your negative feelings and reflect on this. What can you learn from this? How can you use this to help you in the future? Think about good enough and doing things that are good enough, because perfection is impossible, particularly when an issue is complex. Now, sometimes I will feel like an imposter in some of the endeavours that I undertake, and sometimes I have to say, well, do you know what? It was good enough. I did my best, and the work that I produced is good enough and is fit for purpose. I've really stopped trying to aim for perfection because it really doesn't exist. And finally, it's sort of reframing this all and thinking about self doubt as really a core skill. Because in order for us to learn, individuals must be prepared to radically question what one assumes to be true. And therefore, actually, we can really develop as part of our imposter syndrome. And finally, you've absolutely got this. It's just a case of believing in yourself, finding a technique or techniques that work for you, and using them to get through your imposter syndrome. What I would like you to do is spend a couple of minutes setting yourself some goals for the future with what we've discussed today in mind. Think about one short-term goal that you'd like to achieve within a month. Think about one medium-term goal that's to be achieved within 6 months, and one longer-term goal to be achieved within the next 12. And I'd like to leave you with the words of Professor David Burns, who is a professor in psychiatry and behavioural sciences at Stanford University of Medicine. Um, Aim for success, not perfection. Never give up on your right to be wrong, because then you will lose the ability to learn new things and move forward with your life. Remember that fear always lurks behind perfectionism. Confronting your fears and allowing yourself the right to be human can paradoxically make you a far happier and more productive person. Don't forget that we're also here to help. So if you are experiencing imposter syndrome and you've tried some of the techniques, or you would like to discuss some of the techniques further, you can book an appointment with a careers advisor via LaunchPad line. The URL is on the screen. And if you've got any questions, please do contact us at careers@yorksj.ac.uk. I hope today's session has been useful. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.